Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the trade war that's going on between China and the United States. So I'm going to go into detail about what's been happening and why China escalated. And before I start, guys, don't forget to watch the video to the end. It really helps with algorithm, and also you can like, share, and comment as well. And don't forget to join my Telegram. There's a growing community there. You can message each other, you can message me, and it's a very good community to be part of. So make sure you join the Telegram. The link is in the description. So without further ado, let's start. So it looks like things are really heating up between the United States and China, or should I say China versus Trump. And let me tell you something, guys. This is not China banning rare earths from United States. This is merely putting export controls. So they are making sure these minerals and rare earths do not go into the military industrial complex, do not go into making missiles and starting wars around the world. That's what China doesn't want. But they are available for civilian use and everyday use for EVs and computers and phones and things like that. So that's not a problem. Obviously, you need an export licensing for it. So this is not a clear ban, by the way. This is just export control. So why did China suddenly put these export controls in place? For a number of reasons, and I'm going to explain to you why. Number one, there are a lot of wars that's going to be happening or happening around the world at the moment. So let's start with the Russian-Ukraine war. So United States have said that they might offer Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. And if they do that, then that would be a huge escalation and things might, escalate and NATO might get involved. And China doesn't want that. China doesn't want escalation between Russia and Ukraine. So this is their way of basically stopping the military industrial complex from, giving weapons to Ukraine so they can fire at Russia. They do have a lot of stockpiles, but this means that for every missile that gets wasted in Ukraine, United States will have to restock, and for it to restock, it won't be able to if it doesn't have the Chinese rare earths. So that's going to be a big problem. And if they can't restock, they cannot sell these weapons to Ukraine because they need to keep them in stock. And also, Tomahawks use rare earths as well. So Tomahawk missiles use a lot of rare earths as well as other military equipment like F-35s and other missiles and Patriots and things like that. So Tomahawks need these rare earths. Second reason it got escalated is because Trump has been playing games with China. So if you guys remember, in they had a meeting in Switzerland between China and United States. Scott Bessent was there, and they had another meeting in London and a few other places as well. And they managed to iron out some sort of deal. And the deal was, China will still have to pay around 55% tariffs, but they will relax the laws or relax the export controls to the United States. And in the meantime, this was only a temporary agreement between 3 months, and Trump has already extended it for another 3 months. This was only a temporary agreement, but this means that the United States cannot escalate and China cannot escalate. So what happened since then? Basically, the United States and especially Trump were playing games. They started adding export controls to Chinese companies. They started threatening, you know, oil embargoes in Chinese companies for not for selling oil to Iran and Russia. And they've been adding port fees for Chinese ships. They're threatening to cut off Chinese airplanes from landing in United States because Trump doesn't like them flying over Russia for that. because the United States planes cannot fly over Russia. And the reason is they cannot fly over Russia because they sanctioned themselves. It wasn't Russia's fault. It was something that United States did. So all these actions plus more, basically, uh, China thought, we're not going to play games anymore. This guy is not serious. Trump is not serious. United States is not being serious. So we're going to add these export controls to the United States. And the United States has been absolutely gobsmacked by the Chinese actions. They are shocked. They're shocked that a country can throw sanctions at United States because United States has been used to throwing sanctions at other countries for, you know, let's just say 50 years or maybe more. Um, they've been using the dollar as a weapon, and they are not used to countries throwing sanctions back, especially sanctions that really hurt them. And these rare earths will really hurt Americans and American companies because it's going to affect all the factories. First of all, obviously, the military industrial complex, but also rare earths is also used for phones and, factory items and semiconductors and, you know, EVs, batteries, you name it, everything needs rare earths because rare earths have certain individual characteristics that these equipment need. And without rare earths, these equipment they can still make them, but they get very, very expensive, and they don't become competitive as well. They're not very good. So the United States is probably going to take them 10, 20 years to have their own rare earth facility. And this means mining, refining, you know, having the supply chains and the infrastructure. It's going to take them 10, 20 years. So this is the same thing that the United States did to China. If you remember Trump's first term, he placed all these semiconductor restrictions on China, and China couldn't buy any semiconductors, especially the high-end ones. They couldn't buy the semiconductor equipment, like ASML couldn't sell them the EUV machines. However, they could buy the DUV machines, and also they could buy low-end semiconductors. And even recently, Nvidia was not allowed to sell semiconductors to China, and this was the low-end semiconductors. And it was quite humiliating for China because Nvidia, not only were they creating low-end semiconductors to sell to China, but they also had backdoors as well, and they also had location stuff and backdoor hacks and things like that. So it was quite embarrassing to sell these to China, and China obviously didn't have any replacements at the time. They had to use it. And right now they have got replacement. They got the Huawei new chip which is out, which is just as powerful as the most powerful Nvidia chip. So they have a replacement now, and now it's time to start adding sanctions to the United States. So why is China suddenly applying these sanctions to the United States? Why not do it, you know, 6 years ago or 5 years ago? It's mainly because China didn't have any cards 5, 6 years ago. When Trump started the first trade war against China, China was kind of shocked, and they needed to work hard, build up their industry, build up their supply chains, build up their skills, and they're now at a point where they can fight back. They have got the cards, and America doesn't. So it took China maybe 6, 7 years to build up a very good semiconductor, you know, um, sem- supply chain, basically, which means they had to build all the machines locally from scratch. And these were DUV machines, not the EUV machines just yet. And they had to build all the skills in house. All those so many graduates. They used to teach semiconductor courses, and they obviously needed to get jobs and get experience. They needed to work with companies like Huawei, building up, individual components that need semiconductors like lasers and packaging, and also try and spend a lot of money on research and development, building their own machines and new techniques for building semiconductors, like what Huawei is doing right now. They're using their interconnects to link one or more chips together, which makes them faster than Nvidia. So China's taken 7, 8 years to build this semiconductor industry, but they had the will and the drive to do it. The Chinese people are very good when it comes to challenges. If you look throughout history, you know, they were up against the wall when it came to nuclear power. Nobody was helping them with getting their own nuclear missiles and nuclear industry. So they helped themselves and they kind of worked it out themselves. Same way with the space industry, same way with all their military and all their missiles. Everything China has done is all locally made. They didn't have any help from the outside. And does America have the same drive to do that when it comes to the rare earth industry? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think Americans they've had things too easy, and it's made a generation of very weak Americans. They've had it too easy, basically. And now, because they've had it too easy, they've let other countries take their manufacturing away from them. They let other countries work hard building their own manufacturing base. They let other countries produce, use all the pollution to produce all the factories and, all the hard labor. They let other countries do it. And America basically focused on service industries and high-end industries like semiconductors and other things. And unfortunately, I think they've lost the drive. I mean, China's overtaken America in almost every single sector. Even other countries are taking over America as well. And all the jobs in America are pretty much taken over by Indians using the H-1B visas. They're not just taking all the tech jobs, but they're also taking all the, low-end jobs as well. If you go to America, you go to 7-Eleven or any kind of low-end job, you'll see an Indian there with a H-1B visa. So obviously, companies have been taking advantage, getting all these cheap labor in America. Unfortunately, you know, that means that there's not many Americans with good jobs, and that's why a lot of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. They've got low-end jobs. They're having to, find where they can get money from to pay for food or heating. And it's really, really tough living in America at the moment. 80, 90% of them are living in poverty, I would say. I mean, I wouldn't say middle class anymore. I would say probably poverty. Because when you're living paycheck to paycheck, that's pretty much poverty, guys. It's not really, you're not really living, comfortably in the middle class. And the rest of the population in America are just all the rich oligarchs taking all the money basically from everyone else. So it's really difficult to bring all the manufacturing back to the United States because they don't have the skills, they don't have the drive, they don't have the will, they don't have the infrastructure. And if they do anything in America, it's going to be extremely expensive because the land costs are expensive, the rent, the electricity bill, the supply chains, the transport, everything is expensive. The labor. And if you want to do an iPhone in America, for example, instead of it costing $500, it probably costs 10 times as much, $5,000. And I don't think anyone's going to pay that for an iPhone. So America decided to start a fight with China. I mean, this was in Trump's first term as well, and this was extremely naive of Trump to do that because he's the one that kick-started, China's rise to superpower status. I mean, China was they were happily, buying American goods at the time. They were buying soybeans, they were buying American jets, they were buying oil and gas from America. They were buying loads of stuff from America. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars per year. And they were paying up to $300 billion per year for semiconductors from America. Then Trump decided to get really greedy, and he started his first trade war with China, and that kick-started China's drive to be self-sufficient because they realized they cannot rely on America anymore. America can start a trade war with China anytime, and they can stop important, items. For example, they could stop semiconductors. They can kick out Huawei. They can even stop the food source. They can stop soybeans. They can stop oil and gas. So, at the time, they had a lot of power. But since then, China's been diversifying. They um, they bought all the gas and oil from Russia and other countries locally. With soybeans, obviously, they've been buying it from Brazil and Argentina, and they're not buying anything from America anymore. With semiconductors, they're building their own, and everything else they're building their own, and they have diversified all their trade, their exports and imports to the rest of the world. And why not? And America has not done the same. So all their farmers have been reliant on China because think about it, guys. When you have the Chinese 1.4 billion people buying soybeans from America, we're talking about 20 billion or maybe more per year that they would pay for a huge market. No other country can buy that many soybeans from America. No other country. And I'm just going to end it here with the final statement. And throughout history, it's much easier to work with China because China does not want this trade war, to escalate with the United States. China's been left with no choice. China does not want to be humiliated because they remember the 100-year humiliation by the West. They just want to be respected. And they want a win-win situation. But the fact is, Trump has been playing games with China ever since they made an agreement. You cannot sign any agreement with Trump. You cannot agree with anything. You cannot have any contract because Trump will wake up another day and he will tear up that contract and he will get what he agreed on. And you can see with Trump's, I don't know if you guys follow Trump or not, but every single day he changes his mind. One day he wants to put 100% tariff, next day 145, next day he wants to tackle back, he wants to go back to zero or back to 55. You know, in Gaza, he changes his mind every day what he wants to do. He changes his mind every single day with Russia. You just cannot tell with that guy. Even if you make an agreement with him, he will change his mind the next day. So China decided they don't want to play around anymore. And throughout history, if if you become a friend of China, you will basically win in life. You will win. You will win wars. You will win economically. You will win militarily. If you think about it, whoever side China was in its history, they won, right? China was in the side of Vietnam in the Vietnam War, and Vietnam won. China was in the side of North Korea in the Korean War, and they won. China was in the side of America in the Cold War, and guess what? They won. China was in the side of the West in the Second World War, and they won. China was in the side of Pakistan in the Indian War, and they won. I can give you so many examples of, if you're a country and you're in the side of China, most likely you will win. And the latest example is Iran and Pakistan. And obviously, with Iran, they pretty much beat Israel. Israel had to run to America to the war, the 12-day war. Otherwise, Israel would have been completely destroyed by Iranian missiles. And those missiles were helped by China. They helped them with the navigation, they helped them with the materials, the tech, the know-how. And same with Pakistan as well. So you see, whoever side China is in, they will most likely win. It's not just militarily, but economically as well. China will help if you show China some respect. They will help you. They will give you tech transfers. They will help you with your technology. Rather than give you money, they rather use that money to build something that where you can feed your whole family or feed your whole generation. You know, this is what China's good at. You know, they want to lift people out from poverty. They want them to do well. They want them to learn skills to help their whole generation. So America's doing things the wrong way, guys, and you know it would have been much better for America to win, have a win-win with China. But unfortunately, the leadership with the Trump and you have all these China hawks and all the Republicans, none of them are very intelligent. They all have this very Cold War mentality and colonialism, and very kind of exceptionalism as well. They think they think America's a no-sum game where they win and everyone else loses, basically. And that's the game they're playing, guys. And unfortunately, it's not very bright. And you can see Trump is not a very bright president. Everything he says is quite laughable. It's sometimes you don't know whether you're listening to a president or sometimes you don't know whether you're listening to a stand-up comedian. You just can't tell these days. And his tweets are terrible, guys. His tweets are, when you're a president and you want to be taken seriously, just get off Twitter, get off social media. You don't see Putin sending tweets. You don't see President Xi sending tweets all the time. And his tweets are putting him into more trouble. When he sends out a tweet, all the markets crash. You know, um, you ruin relationships with people that you thought, had your back. You know, it's just ridiculous, these tweets, and nobody can take you seriously. And when Trump goes to the UN and makes a ridiculous speech like that, saying all sorts of lies and nonsense in front of the whole world, he might work in front of his MAGA crowd because his MAGA crowd are quite, very like him, basically, not very bright individually, and they just basically take anything he says like gospel. He also acts like a gangster in the United States as well, and he kind of intimidates a lot of people. He threatens them. He takes away their livelihood. It's the same with all the businesses. For example, Nvidia. For Nvidia to sell chips to China, he basically said, "Or I'll let you sell chips to China, but you need to give us 10% of your profits, and also you need to put all these backdoors in these chips so we can monitor China." He puts all these demands on these tech companies and other companies as well. It's like a gangster style approach, but it doesn't work on the international stage. On the international stage, it's very different. But he cannot differentiate between when he talks to his MAGA crowd and when he talks to an international crowd. And he's absolutely made to be ridiculed when he talks internationally, especially when he did the UN recently. So you see, guys, all these trade wars, it's just hurting America more than it hurts China. China has been preparing for this for a long time, and United States has not been prepared for this. And this is going to really hurt America. It's going to increase inflation. It's going to increase the cost of living because Chinese goods are going to be more expensive. Trump is threatening 100% tariffs on Chinese goods. Markets are going to crash again. You know, Trump has got no answer to these. Absolutely no answer. The last time he started this trade war, he had to beg China. He had to basically, they had to go to Switzerland to meet China. They had to literally beg China to turn back their tariffs. And I don't think it's going to work this time, guys, because I think China's given America plenty of chances, and I think China's not going to be playing any games. They know a war in Russia's going to, escalate. There's also talk wars of in Iran as well. There's also talk about war in Venezuela. And obviously, China doesn't want that because Iran and Venezuela are good friends of China. So obviously, China does not want to provide rare earths to the military complex so they can bomb these countries. So I'm completely in agreement with what China is doing, and I think it's about time a country fought back against American sanctions. It really is It really is teaching them a big lesson. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care for now.